rather than compete to kind of get recognition, with social media you can collaborate, and that's how we propose traditional businesses survive the extinction.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, disruptors, and creators who are making things happen. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm here with my co-host Tyler Kelly. And tonight we are in Venture Cafe St. Louis. And Venture Cafe is the #1 largest weekly gathering of innovators who are making things happen. So I'm very excited today to have Jonathan Allen with us today.
What's up, Jonathan?
Hello.
All right, guys, so I'm super excited. Jonathan Allen is a publisher and editor-in-chief at EQ. He's also the co-founder and president at Long Neck and Thunderfoot, which is a brand publishing company incubated at the Columbia University Startup Lab, which is in NYC. And he's here in St. Louis because he won an Arch grant in 2016 that allowed him to open up a Midwest location. And so we're super excited. Jonathan's a friend, and I think you guys are going to be pretty inspired by what he's doing. Welcome.
Now, so Jonathan, when we first met, I think we had kind of a common connection in that I think we had read some similar books and just had a similar mindset about how to approach business and networking and things like that.
Yes, absolutely. It was kind of like the best bit of when I first arrived in St. Louis was coming to your slam sessions and finding out that you guys had worked with one of my favorite business book authors, Tim Sanders, and specifically his book, Love is the Killer App. And that's literally my favorite business book. I recommend it to everyone. And I read it in like 2002 or 2003 or something, like pretty early. And the thing that I learned from it, the best takeaway I got from it is if you can't help solve the problem, recommend someone else who can. And that just that is useful enough and helps kind of build a network, build connections. And, you know, coming out of university and not having a clue about business really, that one tip got me a long way.
Yeah, and so I'm also curious about, so you were in you were in New York prior to coming to St. Louis, but from what I understand, you're from London.
Yep.
So tell me how you came. Tell me about that journey. Like, how did you end up in all those different places?
Yeah, right. Okay. So in London, you know, I tried my hand at 2 startups. One was an analytics company that was came out before Google Analytics. So I was really kind of in deep on web analytics. And then we also did a photo blogging company called Moblog. And that was kind of Instagram before Instagram. Came out kind of a month after MySpace. And we had a lot of success with that. So I was kind of really into startups in London. But then around kind of 2006, 2007, it was like these ideas were glorious failures. So I kind of got back into just getting a proper job, so to speak, and ended up working for a publishing company where I ended up like working with the reporters a lot and doing digital strategy for them. And Facebook came out and, you know, I was a kind of search engine marketing guy for them. And Facebook had launched video. So I kind of created a campaign called 50 SEOs, One Question, where I asked 50 people the same question in the SEO industry. And that was, what should we do with the black hats, which are like the hackers of Google? And the idea was to play with the idea of tagging, because previously on YouTube you couldn't tag people. So basically with Facebook video we could tag them, and actually that video kind of went viral in the search community in London, then in Australia, and then it hit America. And I got a phone call from the people who run Search Engine Watch, and they said, hey, can you come and join our team? And so
awesome.
Ended up in New York about 6 months later.
Just off of video.
Yeah.
So Search Engine Watch, at one time, they were one of the largest publishers of search engine news and tips and tactics.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experience there.
It's the oldest search engine marketing blog. It predates Google. I joined early 2010. And, after I joined, there'd been sort of 5 editors before me. And they were all really successful, but no one could compete with the founder of Search Engine Watch, Danny Sullivan, who had built an incredible brand. And he went on to found Search Engine Land. So when I took over, SEW was kind of like the underdog. And one of the things I realized was I couldn't compete for news head to head. I didn't have the relationships. So instead, I focused on the people in the community and how they were thinking, and started to surface ideas about how they were connecting search strategy with social strategy or paid search and that kind of thing. And that focus on people and values ended up building a kind of audience that could, had its own audience and its own reason to read it. And in the end, we launched a redesign in 2012 and won an award from the American Association of Business Publishers for Best News Website Redesign. And that, basically, in America, if you win a national award, you can actually apply for a special visa to set up your own company. And that's how I ended up with L&T.
Oh, wow. Now, see, I did not know that. So you win any sort of national award and you're free and clear to come over and
theoretically,
stay
you
a
still
while.
got to go through a visa process, but yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool. So L&T, Long Neck and Thunderfoot. Tell us where that name came from.
So it comes from a children's story of the same name, and it's about 2 dinosaurs that are scared of each other and have to collaborate to survive the extinction. And if you've seen Land Before Time, there's the long necks in that. And Land Before Time actually draws on that story too. And basically, the name for the company came from actually my childhood. Me and my best buddy, Robin, he's very tall and I'm very clumsy. So we were always talking about doing like a film company called Long Neck and Thunderfoot. But yeah, when this opportunity arose to set up, my own company, me and my co-founder Cooper, we thought, well, let's choose a name that doesn't get dated very quickly. Particularly in digital marketing, you could say use a industry term and that's like over in 3 years.
Yeah.
So we like the way that Long Neck and Thunderfoot, if we failed at digital marketing, we could launch a whiskey or something.
Yeah. No, I think that's interesting because you talk about the story behind the name, but I think that also kind of connects with what you're trying to accomplish in your company as well.
Yeah, so a big part of like how the online world has kind of changed news. Obviously, we see that a lot now with fake news and things like that. But really, what's happened is that in the old days of publishing, essentially, big publications with print audiences kind of control your access to audiences, which means that you have to work through PR companies to get your message out there. And it basically means you have to go for a lowest common denominator approach. But with the online world now, with self-publishing, social media, all that kind of thing, actually, a lot of what you want to say, you can already find an audience for, and they can connect with you. So actually, nowadays, you don't have to go for a lowest common denominator approach. And you can actually kind of go for your big ideas, go for your sophisticated ones, and, develop a story. And the other side of that is, the economics of publishing are drastically reduced with online. So now you can say a lot of things on a little and often basis, rather than use one PR opportunity to kind of get your whole company out there. So that those market mechanics and just a need for companies to kind of adapt to online in general. Our theory is like, rather than compete to kind of get recognition with social media, you can collaborate. And that's how we propose traditional businesses survive the extinction.
That's awesome. I think I posted on a Facebook post that we were both in the same picture. And I said, I think the future of media is collaboration.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I mean, I absolutely think it is. I mean, it's already happening that way. The kind of news, the media trends that I've seen is like, 2006 with Moblog, we saw citizen journalism become a real thing. But the only reason citizen journalism hasn't necessarily taken off is it still needs the collaboration of big media to kind of, contextualize what they're saying and make sense of it. Collaboration, that's what collaboration brings. It just keeps bringing more additional context to anything anyone's trying to do. And that additional context kind of empowers all organizations involved to deepen their message, say something bigger, more interesting, more powerful.
So in your experience with this, you've kind of been in this whole media digital game like prior to all these big social networks. And I think, Tyler, your experience is kind of the same too. You were in this whole digital search game way before we had Facebook and things like that. So where have you seen it head? And then like, where is it heading? Like what does our future look like? And then what does it look like when you're trying to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish in media?
Yeah, so, right now, say, for instance, EQ, which is, our publication all about St. Louis, EQSTL.com. Like, one of the big theories behind that comes from a comment Mark Zuckerberg made about Facebook and how Facebook was changing the role of news. So he said, a squirrel dying in your front yard might be more pertinent and relevant to you than what's happening, in Ethiopia or something like that. And although it's kind of like a slightly odd thing to say, maybe he sounds a bit callous, like he did kind of get to the point, which is, there's a kind of things that are more directly relevant to you, and those things are things you want to engage with and share and that kind of thing. So with EQ, for instance, our whole approach to publishing there is just surfacing all the great ideas, people, and it's like news as a social network, even though we don't have any social networking component. And that goes back to other kind of theories about news in general. There's I can't remember the name of the guy, but he said, talking about like, a school winning a basketball tournament will get you more attention than focusing on these other like bigger problems. And actually communities, this kind of community news ends up kind of creating sort of brands and identities anyway.
So it's more about building a community than like building awareness around some big problem that's out there.
I think so, because you can kind of tackle that big problem in small incremental ways by building the community. And you need to kind of have common interests to get the community behind it. And then slowly they start to share and communicate and do their own initiatives, which you can then cover too. And that just kind of incrementally breaks the problem down. And so I guess, to answer your question about like, where do I see it all going? I mean, firstly, the thing I'm focused on, say, for the next 2 years is going to be, I think documentary is going to come back in a big way. And it's going to be documentary about not, the diet industry or, the meat industry and things like that. Those are big flagship successful ones, but kind of niche documentaries about how people are approaching problems in a city like St. Louis or Miami or wherever. And telling those kind of deeper stories and capturing those just kind of gives everyone the confidence to go and do their own thing.
I like that. I really, in regards to community, one of the things that really inspires me, just like with getting to work with you on a fairly regular basis, is just like that community first aspect, that L&T and EQ and then all the other side projects that you have going on. Like they're all focused around how do we empower and build on the community that we've discovered. But I think maybe some of that is like you discovered this community and it's like your way of like returning the favor or like, bringing increase to something that you found.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving to America has been very good for me, right? And the community, at a states level has really sort of opened, I've created great friendships and then opportunities like the Arch Grants or the Columbia Startup Lab, really nurtured our company at critical stages in our growth. And we've been able to hire people, that wasn't something I imagined, 10 years ago, I was trying my own business, from home in my boxer shorts. Now we've got 19 people working on stuff. And I think in America, there's a lot of focus on trying to sort of take risks on behalf of developing the community. And that kind of idea is something I really want to bring to England one day, and show the kind of confidence in taking risks that, big organizations in the States can take, and how it supports smaller organizations like startups to just go and really think big. But yeah, community, it is in PR. So in the kind of old school of PR world, they'll say, if you don't say it, someone else will. But actually now everyone can say a million things. So now it's a case of not trying to say the same thing all the time. Actually, we need to kind of use these platforms to speak up for ourselves, both individually and as a kind of community in general. And the more you kind of give voice to your ideas, the more other people can latch onto it, develop it, and push the whole narrative forward. Otherwise, we're stuck in, a kind of scientific form of journalism, which is basically, data about house prices, murder rates, you name it.
Not very inspiring.
Not very inspiring.
I'm curious about your experience in London and how that market per se compares and contrasts to the markets that you've had a chance to get involved with, and what, if anything, you think you could take back to England at some point, maybe not, but just lessons learned, how can you help them to get to where we are?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, the UK and Europe have a lot of kind of core benefits as well in their infrastructure, right? Free healthcare is one thing. That's a major bit of the puzzle that allows people to be confident. However, in the States, there is a much greater capacity for risk, and there's a much greater capacity to kind of recognize that, to make money, you have to spend some money. And in that sense, I find that a lot of companies here are willing to kind of take bets on a kind of small upstart organization like L&T, and, give us full responsibility to deliver a project. I feel like in the UK, that kind of attitude is, they're a bit more protective, if they're going to invest in you, they're going to kind of also kind of mollycoddle you a little bit to take it to the end. And that stifles kind of creativity, and it also stifles your ability to come up with a better process because you're kind of locked into their process. And, the investor community in general in St. Louis and the whole of the States, just kind of really sees the value of making these long-term bets. And when we tried to raise money in the UK for Moblog, we just found that a lot of people kind of couldn't see the future of what we were doing. I mean, it was funny. We were in an investor conversation and they said, all this is pictures of cats and people taking photos of their breakfast. And we were like, yeah, I know, but we think there's something here. And now pretty much the internet is breakfast and cats.
And cats, yeah. The most popular viral posts are always of cats, dogs, and children. Yeah.
So what have you learned from that process? Either it's overcoming a challenge that maybe you had overseas or here, or where has that taken you on your journey?
I guess it's made me try more, and just get started. So certainly in the States, it's I found when I first moved to New York, I found that there was someone who was willing to do any crazy idea you had. So if you were like, let's go and play chess at 4 a.m, there'd be someone who'd be like, I'll come with you. There was a real, yes and can do attitude. So in the States, I feel very empowered to just try something out. And even if it's a flop or a failure, it doesn't matter. At least we tried it. And just the process of trying stuff out and collaborating, everyone learns something. It leads to kind of an end result that was worth way more than the effort. So, you know, that kind of can-do attitude, I do think, is coming across in the whole world now. Everyone's kind of recognizing it. But it's almost like if you immerse yourself for a second in, you know, startup communities like St. Louis or even New York, you'll just kind of soak up that can-do attitude, and it just takes you so far.
So when you came to St. Louis, were you by yourself?
Yeah. So, well, I moved for love and money, essentially.
Okay.
So my girlfriend got into a program at Wash U. So she was kind of the main she put St. Louis on the map, and then I looked into what was happening and found, you know, about the Arch Grants thing and stuff like that. So applied for that and came. But yeah, it was really just me on my own in terms of representing L&T.
So like for an entrepreneur or for a business going into a new market, like what are some high level tips that you could give somebody that is going into a place that they don't have any friends, essentially, right?
Well, so the first thing is like, just like lock into a networking event as soon as you can. I came to Venture Cafe, I think, the second day of being here, and I think I met you on the second day. And, now I kind of turned it into a regular habit of coming to Venture Cafe, because you would have like so many different conversations that you could get a kind of feel for like how people are thinking here. And at first, whenever you go into like those kind of networking events, you think, well, probably everyone knows each other and I'm just a complete stranger. But actually what you find is like everyone's kind of, making new friends there, Yeah. So definitely, choose an event, look into it, make it a habit. For us, like one of the reasons for choosing St. Louis was because we felt that we could build a new team here based on kind of, salary expectations and things like that. So there were risks we wanted to build a sales team, and that it requires a big outlay up front to train people. And that was a risk we couldn't really take in New York, because even if we trained them, we'd probably lose them. But in St. Louis, we could offer really competitive salaries. And if they were going to stick around, if they were successful, they'd probably stick around and we could really start to build something. So the economics of the city, but also kind of lasering in on a specific need that L&T had, made this a really obvious choice.
So London, New York, St. Louis, for the rest of the world listening in, tell them about St. Louis. Like we can tell them about St. Louis all day long, but we're from St. Louis, right. So we're definitely biased. But from your perspective, tell us about like your experience here.
Yeah. So firstly, it's very welcoming. If you read up about St. Louis online, it sounds like a war zone, but it really isn't. And it's like your day-to-day just like is completely divorced from that experience, so much so that you kind of wonder like how does it end up kind of getting that kind of idea. But St. Louis is extremely collaborative. People are extremely friendly, ready to try stuff. It's a city that both the kind of corporation and enterprise side has really, gone for it in terms of wanting to engage at a local level. And then the academic institutions are bringing a lot of weight and lending a lot of weight to the community. So you've got like this amazing kind of combination of authority and sort of openness, which means that if you start something, the energy to take it forward and the allies that can help you really grow it are quite easy to find. So there's that. The other thing is like, the reason, one of the other attractors for me about St. Louis was just like, there are challenges that this city is facing and has faced that it's really tackling head on, and that story just doesn't get told. The depth of thinking. around diversity and inclusion, economic development. I mean, you can meet some of the brightest minds on this who are extremely well read, and they will be able to kind of share exactly what they're doing. And these stories don't really make it out, you know, beyond being here. And it's those kind of challenges and the kind of authenticity with which people are tackling these challenges that is really exciting. I mean, I always say, like, everyone gets into startups because they, you know, want to make a difference or make the world a better place. But in St. Louis, you really actually have the opportunity to really make a difference.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting point, because you're talking about, you know, people don't know about the good things that are happening, sometimes even in their own backyard, which kind of takes you full circle to what you're talking about, where you can have a community of people that are allowed to speak on very specific things because of the opportunity we have in media right now, whereas we don't always hear those stories everywhere. So that's a chance for them to get out.
Exactly. And, you know, there's this kind of Midwestern manners, which is very sort of, what's the word? They tend to not kind of boast too much, you know? Humility, that's the word. But, you know, that kind of character trait is wonderful, but it does create an opportunity, you know, as a foreigner looking in. It's like, you know what? These guys are doing amazing things. There's amazing things happening everywhere, and no one's saying it, and everyone's being really humble about it. And in my case, I was just thought, I want to own this. Let's just go and tell people about it. Yeah.
So you would say, if you're doing something awesome, talk about it.
Talk about it. Let people know, you know, go into some depth, you know. It's amazing how much, like, people kind of keep things at a surface level, but actually we all really want to know, like, how did you do it? What did you think about? What was the, you know, what's the change in your thinking that makes you choose this moment now?
Yeah, that's a great point.
So something you said earlier really piqued my interest, and that was just your experience with the Columbia Accelerator and then the Arch Grant Award. And so for, like, people that are out there, they've got a good idea, they're early on bootstrapping themselves, their business, like, what sort of advice could you give those people to try to get into programs like that, like, based on your experience?
Well, the first thing is that it's never about your startup. So a lot of people, when they go into these pitch competitions or apply for a grant, they really worry about the quality of their idea. But actually, most of these kind of grant programs and accelerators have their own ambitions that are kind of at a wider level, like a civic level or an industry level. And so the main thing is to actually research what those organizations are trying to do and align your pitch around how you're going to fulfill their goals. And that, I think, is a much more powerful way to approach the problem. And actually, it takes the focus off the quality of your idea, because all these organizations don't actually believe you've solved the problem yet. They want to invest in you solving the problem, you know? So they actually just want to make sure you're kind of aligned with what they're trying to do, and then they'll align behind you.
That is a great point. And I've never thought of it that way, because, you know, I've had interviews for people, and they never actually state, like, they want to talk about themselves, but never state what's the value you're going to bring to the organization or how you're going to help the organization meet their goals. And you're saying it's basically the same thing for startup and everything you're involved in.
Yeah, you know, at the end of the day, it's like everyone has that what's in it for me question, and even big grant-making, non-profit type organizations have the same question. Yeah. You know, so address the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. What's on the horizon? Like, what's the next big project that you're working on?
So, so right now, we're kind of a couple of things. We're really trying to expand our St. Louis team. We invested initially in a sales team, but what we've discovered is we've managed to create a really strong analytics team and SEO team. Video is becoming, like, increasingly interesting and important to us. So I think we'll be kind of building out around that in St. Louis. We're also building a new analytics engine to help kind of surface more data for our clients. And then on the EQ side, I'm really trying to start building out more of the kind of presence. So I'm staffing up on reporters so we get more news out there. But also start to do some kind of big digital storytelling projects that kind of surface, again, like these kind of big narratives, you know. So for instance, we've got an idea around starting to showcase like historical heroes of St. Louis, like Marshall McLuhan, Maya Angelou, whose birthday it is today, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And there's this guy, Buckminster Fuller, who invented the term spaceship Earth. So basically start to do some kind of big kind of artistic style pieces that kind of bring everyone back to sort of the core founding values of a city, so that they can kind of, you know, introject those values again in what they're doing locally.
So Jonathan, this has been a great conversation. I just want to ask you like a wide open question, like for the young entrepreneurs out there, or just people in general, like what would be your number one piece of advice?
It's just get started, you know. If you have an idea, or you can dream of an idea, it's as Goethe says, you know, it has a boldness and a power and a magic to it. You know, half the time for myself, I don't start things a lot of the time because I want it to be perfect, and perfection is the enemy of the good. And the thing is, when you get started on something, what you'll find is even kind of a sort of small idea or kind of not fully formulated one will attract people, and they'll want to help. And you'd be amazed how many people want to just kind of volunteer on something they believe in and just be involved. You know, we don't actually get that many opportunities to work on something we believe in life. And the other thing is that by kind of getting started, you already automatically hit the problem. And when you hit the problem, that's actually where the definition of what needs to be done happens. So, you know, it really is true that like the best laid plans, you know, fall apart. You've kind of got to hit the road running and then kind of see how quickly you run out of steam, and then that's a problem you can address. A lot of the kind of personal things that have happened in my life are as a result of just trying something out, you know. So even this viral video, it was a friend, Vincent, who suggested the idea and then just lent me his camera one day and said, just go and do it. Yeah. And I literally showed up, you know, one day at a conference, put the tripod up and said, okay, let's do it. You know, little did I know where that was going to take me. And I think the same's true for everyone, you know. And now we have the tools to get started so much more easily than anything before. I mean, you don't even need money to get started now.
There's no reason not to start whatever idea is in your head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like that. And, you know, a lot of times that idea, you know, it just like it wells up like from within you. And so I would almost call that like an intuition. And I think that's the best advice in the world. It's just like whatever that is, just get started doing it, knowing that when you follow your heart, everything else figures out how to make it happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's good stuff. Jonathan, this has been a great conversation.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jonathan, where can we find you? Where's the best places to find you online?
Yeah, so JC1million on Twitter. Follow us on EQSTL and Thunderfoot. So on Twitter, you'll find it.
Awesome. Thanks again, Jonathan.
Cheers.
For more episodes, visit innovationcity.co. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. And if you're in St. Louis, visit us on a Thursday night. Details at vincafstl.org. And connect with us on social at We Are Slam or at Venture Cafe STL. Thanks for listening.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win.